Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Appreciate you stopping by. Got a bunch of stuff to go over today, so let's get right into it. Apologies for the delay in uploads. It's just been a just crazy busy start to the year, just with all sorts of work and cards and all kinds of things. So yeah, definitely a significant delay in the uploads, but I'll do my best to get something here going today. So all right, so we left off in the Elvis realm, obviously, sort of the vintage non-sport stuff. Really been just focused on this kind of thing for pretty much exclusively for this early part of the year. Like, I think I bought my first sports card just like a couple days ago, and I've only bought one modern Star Wars card. So yeah, it's pretty much been all this kind of stuff, just the old music, old Hollywood stuff. And yeah, so we'll get into that today. But I've showed this card before. This was the 56 Elvis, card number 1 from the top set. I show this because this is kind of sort of where we left off last time. And then I think I've shown pretty much every card from the set except for the card that's actually my favorite. So I want to get into that one today. And that is card number 21. And I've got 6 copies of this now. I've got 4 raw copies, and then I've picked up a couple graded copies as well. This was the first one I picked up that was already graded, SGC7. This is just the self-titled Elvis Presley card, and I think this one's really definitely probably my favorite. Yeah, I think it comes down to just card number 1, card number 21, and then there's a handful of others I would say that are sort of a tier below, but I think these 2 specifically are kind of like the quote-unquote best cards in the set. I would think most people would go with card number 1 just as the sort of the best card in the set. I would challenge that a little bit and just say that I think number 21 is kind of a better card. Aesthetically, I mean, I think it looks, they're both great, but I think 21 is just a little better looking. This image is obviously iconic. It's the image on his first album, self-titled album. It was used for a ton of promotional materials in the 50s, obviously. This was at the, taken at a show in Tampa in 1955. This is obviously a promotional photo as well that was done around that time, but yeah, I just think this is such a sharp card. I mean they both are, but if I had to choose which one I think is quote unquote the card, I would go with this one. And I think I have the same number of copies of each of these now. Yeah, I think I have 5 copies of this, of card number 1, and I have 6 copies of this. The copies, now, another thing that card number 1 does have going for it, though, is the condition on this is far more challenging. Like this card, condition-wise, has a ton of issues. There usually creases up here. Centering is usually pretty terrible. This 5 was pretty immaculate to find, but this 7 here is really sharp. I think the centering's a little bit off, but I mean that's pretty nice. And just the overall look of it is really great. No distracting print dots. The guitar is like perfectly clear. You see there maybe one little red dot in that lower kind of right side. But yeah, I just think this is a better overall card though. For one, it is the quote unquote Elvis Presley card. If you think about like ultra modern stuff, like with Star Wars, we have scene cards and portrait cards and that type of thing. I would associate this, obviously it featured, all the cards in the set feature him exclusively, but this features more of a action type moment. Not that that's a bad thing or anything, but it's just, I'm just looking at very subtle differences here and trying to decide why I think one's better than the other. And I think with this one just being, the card that says Elvis Presley on the guitar. I think that kind of matters. There is another card that does that, but it's a bit different. It's the record checklist, card number 2, I believe. It says Elvis Presley, but it's in cursive, which is kind of weird. And it just sort of being like an album checklist, I think it's just sort of different. So that's kind of why I put this one a little bit ahead. The market, I would say, will probably always value card number 1 higher. And then I think this is pretty much accepted as, I would say, the second most valuable card in the set. But right now it doesn't even really matter because there's just not a huge market around this type of stuff. So it's kind of, you know, still in sort of a, kind of ironic to think of it that way, but it's still in sort of a discovery phase, even though it's like 80 years old or whatever. But so yeah, that 7 was really great. I was super stoked to pick that up. I did get another one graded. This PSA 8 came up, which is just wild. This is like a pop 40, I think, with, I want to say 10 higher. This one is dead center. I actually think, though, that SGC copy looks better. You'll see a couple of print dots there on his hair, 2 green dots, and a kind of a blue dot there as well. But I mean, this is a nice looking copy. It's an old cert, obviously, so you're gonna have sort of not as strict of grading standards as you would probably see now. The guitar is perfect. Yeah, there's no issues on the guitar, which is nice. That's one of the main thing I look for with these. Just because that's such a distracting place to have a print dot. You see that here on card number 1. There's one right below the L in Elvis, but still, that's actually a very clean relative. I could show you some pretty terrible ones on other cards I have, but yeah, this is a great looking 8. I'll get this reholdered eventually and put in a new case. But this is just a really, really nice card. Eventually I'll grade all those other raw copies I have as well and maybe sell 1 or 2, but I think the raw copies I have probably are mostly in the 6 range. I might be able to squeeze a 7 out. We'll see. But yeah, you can tell me which one of these you think looks better. Centering is just a little bit better on the PSA copy. Obviously the print dots on the hair detract a little bit from the PSA copy. The color on the SGC looks better. But yeah, overall, I would say the SGC 7 is a better looking card. I don't really want to snap this out and send it to PSA just because I guess I could. Yeah, maybe I'll do that at some point. We'll see. But let's check out the back. Centering on the back of the PSA is pretty off. It's pretty far to the right. And then on the SGC, this one looks better on this. Yeah, I think overall this is just a better looking card, the SGC 7 here. So, but those are big ones. These are my favorite Elvis cards. These two, card number 1 and card number 21. So yeah, pretty stoked to have both these graded. Nice looking copies too. They're hard to find. They don't just there's not just a bunch of them sitting out there or whatever, and so pretty stoked on this. So that's the kind of the early Elvis stuff. More of that. This card as well, I think was one of the best cards in the set. It's kind of in that not lower, but not top tier. But this is a card that features imagery from the Tupelo Homecoming show, which is pretty iconic. Elvis was from Tupelo, Mississippi. He came back after he really blew up and played a hometown benefit show at the fairgrounds. And this, you can actually watch video footage of this. There's like a 19-minute video on YouTube of this concert, and it's pretty impressive. The film quality is really good. The sound is, rough in spots, but you can hear him sing, Heartbreak Hotel, Hound Dog, Don't Be Cruel. Yeah, a lot of the big ones. And there's even a part where some lady runs up on stage and like rushes him and the security takes her away. There's a portion of it where the mayor gives him like a key to the city, like a big guitar. It's really cool. Just type in on YouTube, just type in Elvis Tupelo show, and it's, like I said, it's, you got like hundreds of thousands of views. It's really, really wild. And I think you can actually see this moment in the video. So yeah, this is, I mean, this has got to be, just broadly speaking, in terms of how iconic Elvis is, how iconic that show is. I think this has got to be one of the kind of the low-key special tops cards that's out there that features a very, very recognizable moment. I mean, if you're not familiar with Elvis or whatever, you might just think, oh, whatever concert, but yeah, I can assure you it's a pretty big deal. This would have been after he had been on Ed Sullivan and that type of thing. So he had played this venue before. He had played there as a 10-year-old kid in a talent show, and then he had played there as an adult, but he was like sort of a opening act, and he wasn't quite, blown up and famous and all that yet. So, but this time it was all about Elvis, and he really was, pretty big deal at that moment. So I've got 2 or 3 copies of that to get graded here eventually, but right now just leave that one in a one touch. So that's got actually a couple more here too. I do have a ton of, not all the Elvis stuff I've got is his tops. I've been buying quite a lot of these as well, which, the Dutch gum cards from the 60s. There's some from the 50s as well. They start about 57 for Elvis, and they go all the way up to like 68, and more like probably 65. And there's some later ones too in the 70s, but yeah, most of them are in the early to mid 60s. This is a really clean copy here. Most of these feature his movie projects and such, because obviously he went to the Army in 58, and then he didn't, then he got back around 1960, and then he was not playing shows at that time. He was, more focused on the movies and whatnot. So all of these are going to be sort of film-related images. I don't know off the top of my head which movie this is from. All of Elvis's movies are fairly similar, in style and in look and all that sort of a thing. But I thought this is just a really sharp looking card. I probably got it pretty cheap. This one's cool because it features him during his service over in Germany. Really clean copy here, really nicely centered. I don't remember off the top of my head what year this is, but I'd have to look at my records. But that's just a very cool one there of Elvis in uniform. This could have been when he was returning from service, actually, in 1960. I'm not sure. But yeah, I'd have to sort of sync up that image online and figure out exactly where that was from. So yeah, a ton of that stuff. I'll show more of that down the road, like as I get it graded and whatnot. But yeah, so, and then speaking of grading, I have had one PSA return in the interim since I did my last video. I don't have all the cards with me today, and a lot of them are stuff that, just a project that I'm working on that I'm not going to get into right now, but I got a couple here that were pretty cool. I got this Marilyn Monroe PSA 3. Always thought this was one of her best, sharpest looking cards. Just really good color. I like the symbol. This is the symbol builder set from 1957. I like these because I just like those little movie logos, like the studio logos. I think those are really cool. And I've got a handful of other actors and actresses from that set. So really happy with the 3 on this one. Again, centered nicely. These are really brutal cards condition-wise. Obviously, I mean, they're from the 50s, but typically really, really tough to find in such good condition. And actually, it kind of speaks to how nice this Elvis card is now that I think about it. I mean, that's like extremely sharp. And yeah, anytime you're approaching sort of mid-grade on these, I think you're doing pretty well. In this Liz Taylor here, I did get a 6, which is pretty high. I think this is the actually going to be the second highest PSA grade I've ever got on one of these Dutch gum cards. This is from 1962 here. Centered pretty well, corners are pretty good, no creases or anything. So I got a PSA 7 once, and I've got like 8s and 9s on the Muppet cards from 78, but those are obviously newer. But yeah, these 50s and 60s are pretty brutal. I sent 2 copies of that. I got a 6 and a 3. They look basically the same. This is the 3. I have this on eBay, so if you're interested in these kind of things, definitely go check out the eBay store. I'll put the link in the description, and I've got this for sale. Not very much, you know, 30, 40 bucks or whatever, but this is it's another sharp looking card. I think the corners probably just obviously sharper on the 6. Centering actually, yeah, probably a little off on both, but a little better on the, yeah. So, and this has probably got little creases on the corners or whatnot, but pretty stoked on those. Just been grading a ton of that stuff. Again, this whole year has really been all vintage for me so far, all non-sport for me. Just seeing a lot of relative value there in those categories. And yeah, that's, you know, it's just kind of just the way it's been. So yeah, stoked on that stuff. If we go back to pickups now, so obviously Elvis has been kind of a big focus for me, but that's also really transitioned into the Beatles. I watched the Beatles 64 documentary on Disney Plus, and I just thought it was awesome. I've watched it like 3 times now. Highly recommend you check that out if you have a Disney Plus subscription. It's called The Beatles 64, and it chronicles basically they had somebody with them in their group when they came to America in February of '64 that basically just documented their whole trip. And it's a lot of just behind the scenes footage of all the guys and that type of thing. And yeah, I was just blown away by it. And obviously it's just like Elvis, you know, everybody knows the Beatles, everybody knows the songs, but it's like, I had never really dug into it that far before. So once I saw the film, you know, I was like, obviously then you start thinking about the cards and you start this, that, and the other, and one thing leads to another, and you kind of find yourself collecting something brand new. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now with this card. I really like quite a bit because it features that sort of that Pan Am flight, which is very kind of iconic, you know, arriving in New York, getting off the plane, all the fans waiting for him, that type of thing. Just that type of imagery, I think, is really something I highly associate with the Beatles and Beatlemania and that kind of stuff. So, got all the guys there. You got John, Paul, Ringo, George on the right. Just a really great image, nice grade. I mean, these cards, I'm not paying very much for this stuff, and it's just, yeah, it's just a wide open sea right now in terms of deciding what you like, finding condition that you like, imagery you like, all that kind of thing. And so yeah, I'm not gonna dive too deep into all the this and that specifics of that the 60s Beatles cards. I mean, you can kind of get into that, but yeah, big picture, 1964 is kind of the year for Beatles stuff. Again, it's when they came to America. It's when they blew up, and over here at least. But cards-wise, you got top sets, you got O-Pee-Chee sets, you've got ABC sets, and then you've got a lot of, you know, overseas issues as well. And just like with Elvis and the Dutch gum cards, all that kind of stuff is available for Beatles. I've been getting into that as well. Some stuff like this. Like, these are really pretty rare cards. I think these are Italian or Spanish. No, these are Spanish, yeah. But just imagery I like. This is George here, obviously. The top stuff, this is way more common. You can find it's not like as common as vintage baseball or whatever, but the big thing on this kind of stuff is going to be who the manufacturer was. So the tops is going to be the most common. The O-Pee-Chee and the ABC is going to be harder to find. The O-Pee-Chee was in Canada. The ABC was in England. There's a few different sets. We'll talk about those later, but yeah, so those are kind of the variables with this stuff. With this, it's more just like absolute type rarity. This is a 64 or 65 Spanish set. You can see on the back here. I went online, just did a Google image translation to figure out what all these were talking about. I got a few here. That's George. I thought this one was really cool. This is George, John, and Paul, and they're visiting a kid in the hospital in Spain that had talked about how much she liked the Beatles. And it says on the back of the card that they spent like 3 hours there, which is pretty crazy. Just to think of, you know, at the height of their fame, how cool that was for those guys to like take all that time to do that. And they just look really happy too, which I think is really cool. You see Paul there on the right, John in the middle, George on the left. I don't know where Ringo is, but yeah, I thought that was a pretty neat card. And then this George here, this really sort of exemplifies kind of the type of imagery I'm looking for on these cards. I've got a couple of variables. One major disqualification for me is if the drum is featured, it has to have the logo. On some of the Topps cards, they have like Ringo's drums, but they're just blank. And I don't know if there's a reason that they had to like scrub that, like for copyright purposes or whatnot. On certain sets, it doesn't really make any sense to me. Or if there were just times when he played with a drum that didn't have a logo, but I don't think that's the case. So I do like the cards that prominently feature that sort of logo on the drum. I just think that's such a massive part of their sort of zeitgeist and whatnot. But you've got George here, just a really classic shot with the drum off to the left. I can't remember what this one says on the back, but yeah. So these are cards I'll send to PSA eventually. They're a little bit big, and I was a little nervous to see if they would actually fit in the case, but I did find like 1 or 2 examples on eBay of these that had already been graded. So I think they just kind of barely fit there. So we'll see. Those will look really cool in cases though when I get that all figured out. But a couple other slabs here. So this is the 64, just the Beatles color set. The first couple sets were black and white. This is the O-Pee-Chee version. That's like a pop 1, maybe 2, I don't remember. This is from the 64 black and white set, the Topps. This is the Topps version. And this is the second series. So the second series and the third series are going to be considerably more rare than the first series images. Again, with this stuff, anything that has to do with them on the plane, arriving as a group, I think is really cool. Just like with the Pan Am flight here. This is a PSA 7. This was probably $15. I mean, already graded. So I'm not breaking the bank on this stuff here. I wouldn't have bought this if it was like 50 or 60 bucks, but yeah, $15. I mean, that's for a 7. Like, I'm probably never going to be able to find a 7 raw anyway, so it doesn't really make any sense to not buy it. But yeah, I thought this is a great card. It's just a facsimile signature. It's not actually autographed or anything, but yeah, you got George, John, Paul, Ringo up top there. A sharp looking card. These are blank on the back. Not totally blank, but you see second series TCG. That means this is the Topps version. I'll show you the back of this one. These are actually pretty cool. This has got to be one of the cooler card backs ever made by Topps. You got all the Beatles there on the left. You got Paul. You got George. No, let's see here. That's who? Oh shoot, who's that? So that's Paul at the top. John's second from the bottom. Yeah, okay, yeah, George. So it goes Paul from top to bottom. It's Paul, George, John, Ringo. Yeah, and so you see the different sets, but this is the color version. The I think the ABC, the only set that has this back is the Topps and O-Pee-Chee version of the color set. The ABC color set has just this type of background, I think. So, but yeah, these are great cards. They're really, such a cool card back. So, it does say TCG there, but you know it's an O-Pee-Chee version because it was printed in Canada. So that's the differentiator there. And then this one. So again, I like the cards with the planes, or them arriving on the planes. And then I like this. Anytime they're playing is cool. but it has to have doesn't have to have the drum. I prefer it to have the drum though, and if it does have the drum, it has to have the logo. No blank drums. So not sure what this could have been. Ed Sullivan. It could have been some show in London. I have no idea. But this is a 6 here. This was like $10 already graded. So again, these are just a lot of value for me. I can't imagine, you know, there's this, and again, the second series, those are going to be harder to find. So cool signature there, facsimile John Lennon signature. You got John, you got Paul, you got George, you got Ringo up there. So very cool stuff. So yeah, that's kind of all the pickups I have for today. Again, big picture wise, I've just been really focused on this stuff. Just mostly from a budgetary perspective, it's really affordable. Again, $15. You know, this Elvis cards, I think, let's see. This is probably like the best Elvis card I'll ever have. And, you know, theoretically speaking, it's probably one of the best Elvis cards that exists. I mean, there's only 10 copies graded higher than this. And if I'm operating under the logic that I think this is kind of the, you know, 1A, 1B card in the set, when am I going to find a 9 or a 10? I don't think there are any 10s. But this is probably like $125. And that's wild to me. I think the SGC copy was about the same. Not that much. So yeah. So just to think, like, for the longest time, I've been looking for ways to like get back involved with vintage and baseball and that type of thing. But as long as this stuff, like for somebody like Elvis or the Beatles, is this cheap, I just can't justify, you know, spending hundreds or thousands of dollars on vintage baseball cards that I can't really afford when my connection to like Elvis or John Lennon or whoever is stronger, you know, than my connection to, you know, most baseball players. You know, it's like, I would love to, you know, get some more Willie Mays cards or Mickey Mantle cards or whatever, but if I like Mickey Mantle and Elvis, you know, equally, which I like Elvis a lot more than I like Mickey Mantle, and the costs are just like, you know, Elvis stuff is like 5% of the cost and 10 times more rare. It's just, you can imagine that sort of value continuum and how that sort of plays out. But yeah, super stoked on all this stuff. Happy to get a video recorded here. Hope you enjoy these cards. I'll be back again. I'll probably be still at a little somewhat infrequent basis, but I'll try to get some more robust videos filmed when I do have the time. So hope everybody's doing well. Appreciate you supporting the channel and sticking around. And yeah, take care. Hope everybody is having a good time with cards. All right, take it easy, everybody.